Hey, you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast. I am the hostess with the mostest, Bruce.
And I'm Chris, and cilantro sucks.
Oh, what the fuck? We'll have to get into that another time, because cilantro's one of my favorite things, but cilantro and Gojira are not one of my favorite things. I don't even know. How long is that story? Is it longer than a minute?
Oh, it's long, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to do that on Wednesday.
It involves two events in my life.
Two events, bad events with cilantro?
Oh, God. Let me put it this way. When I eat cilantro, it's like a psychedelic drug.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I get so high off it.
Oh.
And it took me years to figure out what caused it.
Like you tripping out?
Well, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember what happens after I eat it.
Wow.
Mm.
Very interesting. Yeah, we'll have to get into that on Wednesday. But anyway, today we've got a great show. We've got Jeff from Annihilator. I know you know him from the boat and the open air jams or open water jams or whatever they're called. So it'll be great.
Oh yeah, and Russ, who was on one of our earlier podcasts, a good friend of mine, he used to play bass with Annihilator.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I can't wait to talk to him. The guy is like probably one of the best metal guitarists out there. And, possibly even one of the most underrated guitar players in metal.
I think so for sure.
Like the new record, the guitars I've never heard guitars that tight in my life as I heard on the new record.
Yeah, it's really good. So if you want to hang on a second, let's go ahead and get him on the line.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Good. Sorry I'm late. Everything's backed up.
No, that's fine. It dropped me right into the middle of your conversation earlier, so I didn't mean if I interrupted it. I'm sorry.
No, all good.
Hey, Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, there's my partner, Chris.
Hey, Chris. How you doing, Jeff?
Very good.
Cool, man.
What time is it there?
10:30. Well, now 10:35 or something.
Oh, so you're on the East Coast.
Yeah, where are you at?
England.
Oh, you're in England today? Jesus.
Yeah.
Where are you just
more
in
east than you?
I'm in Virginia.
Yeah, it was just, I think I got Virginia, eh? Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I just went on vacation with my family to Vancouver for a few weeks and then hung out the famous Bryan Adams Pop Stars studio. So I had a good time there. It was a beautiful city, and I used to live there for 18 years, so it was good seeing friends again and hanging out. But now it's back to cold northern England.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I lived in Vancouver for 20 years, and now I'm in Virginia. It's a bit warmer here than it is in Vancouver in the summer, but yeah,
not bad. Yeah, Vancouver sure has changed. It was a completely different city when I went back last week.
Yeah, it's a different place, man. In the last 20 years, it's completely morphed from what I went when I moved out there when I was 18. I was like, yeah, it's so different. Yeah. That's cool. Places change.
Yeah,
I was actually listening to the record yesterday when it was sent over for us, the pre-release stuff. And let me just get my page open here. And the song came on, and it blew my mind away, Psycho Ward. And
right.
I have to say this right away. It kind of has like this Van Halen. I know it doesn't sound like Van Halen, but it has that Van Halen kind of vibe.
Well, if you were sitting right where I am right now, looking through my eyes, I'm sitting on the couch in my recording studio. There's 11 Van Halen guitars, about 4 Van Halen guitar straps. I got a whole box full of Van Halen picks. I've got my dust covers, to cover up equipment in my studio. These racks of gear are all Eddie Van Halen beach towels from his website.
Nice.
And I collect, fuck music. I'm going to talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I collect Dallas. You remember J.R. Ewing Dallas from the 70s and 90s?
Oh, yeah.
That I collect rare stuff like signatures from all the people living and dead from that show and coffee mugs and shirts, which are hard to find. And I collect Van Halen paraphernalia and guitars and also Coca-Cola. So I've got the most addictive, expensive hobby in the world because Coca-Cola is probably the most collectible. It's got the most collectible things out there. I think if you search on eBay, there's like 68 million Coca-Cola items on eBay.
Right, so you could go down a rabbit hole really quick then.
Yeah, I have. I mean, the only good thing I surprised my dad years ago because he was always really, a very smart and educated guy, very good with finance. He knows how to invest and save and work hard and good morals and everything. And I learned, at least if I didn't learn to be like him, at least I learned from him that if I'm going to be rude or cheat or steal or be an asshole, I should feel guilty doing it. But he was kind of shocked because he came in to my place years ago and said, well, what, you don't have any mutual funds? And I looked at him and sort of sarcastically kind of said, half not knowing and half knowing a bit, what are mutual funds, Dad? So, I mean, and I was in my 40s at that point. He was kind of shocked, and then I walked him over to my guitars on the rack of my studio, and I had a fairly big collection. It would be a triple-digit collection before I moved to England. And I said, Dad, pick a guitar. Point to a guitar. And he pointed to this, I think it was a Diablo SG. And he goes, well, how much is that worth? And I said, I think I got it for free from Gibson, and I think it's 20. Is it 20,000 or 25? And then he looks at me like, that guitar's worth that much. You could buy a little car. And I'm going, yeah.
Right.
And then he put his finger on this one called Fender Replica EVH Frankenstrat, and that's the famous guitar Eddie Van Halen's kind of the most famous one he's known for. And Fender did a limited edition 300 run, I think 2007 or 2010, one of those years, of 300 of those, and they would sell for $25,000 US. So of course I got one. And it was said to me, and this is remember, Eddie Van Halen is like my god, along with Angus Young and Glenn Tipton. So to say this from a completely not nice standpoint, just sort of pulling back from that fact, the inhumane fact is that guitar, those things will double, triple, quadruple in price at some point, let's just say politely, when he passes on to guitar heaven, right?
Right, and there's your mutual funds.
I explained that to my dad, and he looked at me and said that could be worth $75,000 or $100,000, and I looked at him and said, yeah. And so my dad finally shut up about investing in money and didn't worry about me coming on.
Nice.
He's like, I did good, son. I did good. You learned.
Yeah. A lot of people will come into my studio, or they'll see the guitar stuff and they'll see the gear and they'll go. And of course, I use that. I let people know you're in the music business. I mean, I'm in the music business, and I want people to come to my studio, and I like working with other people, and so you show it off a bit, right? I mean, you try not to be too much of a jerk about it, but you make sure when you're taking pictures sometimes that you show the cool thing in the background. You know what I mean? Like, it just helps. It just helps you out, and it's like the thing is. Some people get that I'm 54 years old and that I've been playing guitar since 7, and seriously playing since I was like 13 in lessons, classical lessons, and then all of a sudden, quote, professionally in 1989. And guitar companies would send me guitars, and I wouldn't even be signed to anybody, and they just give me guitars, and I'd say, well, if I don't like it, I'll have to send it back. And they'd say, no, just take these 2 guitars. And if you don't like it, I mean, if you're not too great, just keep them, And they had a certain budget where they could, all these, 50 guitar companies could send out free guitars to the James Hetfields and the Jimmy Pages to try to get them to use their equipment and guitars.
Right.
And I would just I thought, okay, I'm not signing to an endorsement deal because all the companies are sending me stuff. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, and it's like a mechanic. If you're working as a professional mechanic, let's say you're working on Porsches or you're working on some kind of fancy cars or just, general good lifelong career mechanic. Well, those red drawer units they have can contain, $75,000, $100,000 worth of tools, so it's like, a lot of people go, well, why do you need this stuff? And I go, well, I don't, but it's my job. These are my tools. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I didn't pay for all of them, so. But I'm getting sidetracked because I got ADHD and I love it. Go ahead.
No, we like talking about everything, so that's great.
Yeah, no, this podcast that we do is we try to have casual conversations instead of ask the same old questions all the time. So it's
I'm kind of getting bored of that. It's really boring talking about that, but I will go into Psycho Ward now that you brought it up. That is a very reminiscent of that song Stonewall we had on our second record called Never Neverland, and that was completely intentional. I liked the format or the fact that song we did was kind of like a big hit in Germany, and it got on MTV and in the States on kind of regular rotation in 1990, and it was like, why'd that one get on there? It's kind of like a poppy, commercially fun vibe to it, and the video had us on the edge of a really nice, Alouette Lake in Golden Ears Park in Maple Ridge in BC in Canada, and it's a beautiful setting for the video. But I liked the way that song was put together because the verses were like a commercially Exodus, Gary Holt type and Rick Hinault riff,
right?
And then the pre-chorus, where there's two lines being sung by the singer, is more like a White Snakey vibe, and then the chorus goes into "That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll" by AC/DC. So it's like I liked it because it was really sneaky. It was like not intentional, but I realized looking back on it, man, you got Exodus, White Snake, and AC/DC in the three parts of the song, and everybody's loving this tune, and I don't think people understood, hey, break that down. Look where this came from. It's awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of ripped myself off, so to speak, on that song, but knowing that I only want to rip the spirit off. I'm not going to go note for note, and I can at least be a little more original. But I sure made a lot of the fans in Europe, and the old schoolers that remember us from North America, go, hey, that's a familiar song,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I only discovered Annihilator when I met Russ Berquist. And I didn't actually really get to know Annihilator until I saw you on 70,000 Tons of Metal.
Yeah, that was me too.
In 2011. So I'm not very familiar. Like, I remember Alice in Hell growing up, obviously. But when I heard Psycho Ward yesterday, I just... What's that?
You kind of shouldn't be familiar with it because, it depends on your age, but if you're like an old school, let's say you're 45 or 50, or say you're 50 years old, whatever, metal fans were kind of told by the industry in 1992, 93 when, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all that stuff came in, not Soundgarden, but they were still pretty damn heavy for the time. When that Seattle scene and music changed, in 1992 or 93-ish, the big labels were literally sending memos out saying that anything with the word heavy metal or thrash metal in your biographies and your band rosters, get rid of them unless they're selling big numbers. And there was literally, because people didn't know this back then, and there was no internet at the time, and this is so far long ago that newer fans might find this cool if they believe me. It was a clean sweep of most all heavy metal bands. It was like considered a joke. It was like it wasn't the fault of the hair bands, but when you had the Cherry Pie and you had this sort of A-level, I got to say A-level, Poison, Rat, Motley Crue. You had all this sort of hair bands that were the good ones, and then you had huge run of the imitators came out, the real cheap copies of them, and that was kind of almost the final straw that sort of, I thought, broke it and made everybody go, okay, it's time for this massive, number 2 biggest selling industry genre in the world. It's time for it to cycle out now, go away, and maybe come back later, but we don't want it now. And that's what happened. It all got taken out. And a lot of metal touring in North America was based on the smaller levels and medium levels was actually based on playing some cool clubs, and they were also attached to strip bars. Well, when that kind of music left, so did the strippers, and so did the venues for the band. And it really took, like, forget it. So new bands didn't have a place to start in this kind of music. There was no opening for them to really do it. And therefore, the whole I'm going to babble. This is awesome.
No, please babble.
Unless you can, And then what happened is, there's, like, bands were losing record deals immediately. We got kicked off of Roadrunner on a third album. We bumped up to Sony at that point, but because that clean sweep went out, At least we had in the early 90s, we had, Painkiller, Rust in Peace. We had, for Annihilator, it was Never Neverland, and we had some great stuff at the end of that particular era. But literally, that was it. You were being told to cut your hair and get a real job, or sound like Sepultura, Biohazard, or Pantera was the exact quote from my A&R guy, is other than that, just get a real, your career's done. And I joke with that particular A&R guy that everybody knows. I joke about it once in a while because 6 months after we were dropped from Roadrunner, I signed the biggest deal I ever would have for the rest of my career, and it was like the kind of thing where you were told your career's over. 6 months later, you've never had to manage money before, because when I was with Roadrunner, the manager and label made all the money, basically, let's put it that way without getting detailed. So all of a sudden, I was told my deal was done, my career was done. I didn't want to, start a band, change the name, and jump on let's try to jump to a different type of music that's going to be popular. And I was kind of bummed out, depressed, and then all of a sudden, I literally had, at that point, I won't say the money, but it was bought a house, built a recording studio, bought 2 cars, and could go on vacation anytime I wanted. So that was kind of like handed to me when I knew nothing about money. And I got very lucky and built the studio. And that was the only thing that saved me from going under all my life, is that I'd had this studio. So I no longer had to borrow money to pay a studio money to make a record. All of a sudden I had everything. I just walk in there with a cup of coffee and relax and make a record. So anyway, I could go on. I've totally lost where I was going with this, but it just became, it became for me with my band specifically, I just said, well, if Canada, my home country, and the States don't want this kind of music, well, then, and they definitely don't want me, then this Music for Nations company in London and the Japanese company that signed these deals with me, and the big publishing company, they want me, let's do it. So I was like, hey, I do have a career, let's go. And I went on and put an album out called King of the Kill that was literally a #2 biggest record in, for example, in Japan. Bon Jovi was the only band bigger for that 6 months. And we would have 3 singles on the radio. And you go to shopping malls all over Japan, and they'd be playing our music in shopping malls. And it was just, it's like, and then I go back to, talking to my friends in Canada, and they go, so, are you working for a video game company now? What are you doing? And I go, no, I'm still touring. I still do albums. And that's the way it continued for years and years and years. And when I finally saw metal coming back, I finally said, okay, now it's time to bring Annihilator back, because we've been having a lot of success from day one in Europe. I guess, and there's no rush, no pressure, no money issues to, have to get deals just to survive over here. And I thought, okay, a little bit cocky. I came back years ago and thought, okay, I'll just come in, and a few of my friends are in some pretty awesome and big bands that offered to take us on tour to give us a restart there, and the labels all turned me down. Every last one of them turned me down and said, and for good reason. They said, A, you're not a new band. Okay. Right. B, you're considered an older band. C, having you, quote, come back to the United States and Canada would be great if you were previously a huge band, but you're not. And you weren't. We did well for the first 2 records, but we weren't selling millions. We weren't at the Megadeth level or the Slayer level. We were at the Testament level at that point. So then it was the harsh reality that if you give up on a territory or a continent or whatever it is, and you say, I can go somewhere else and make a living and make my music and have fun because they want us over there, that don't ever expect that they're ever going to open their arms. The industry will welcome you back. And that's exactly what happened. And fans are going, why don't you play here? Why don't you tour here? Why don't you do this? Come on, you got money. Why don't you just go back and get in a couple of vans or a bus and tour? Well, the fact is I had 2 of the big 4 bands asked me to go and to the States with them to help me out. And I would jump in for joy going, yes, I'll do it, blah, 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 and I'd even put my own money in, pay the crew, pay my band, pay for the bus, and, you scale down and just do this to get to the fans that still know us there. And literally, the bands and their agents, the bands would come back to me and go, listen, I'm sorry, but our manager and our tour agent said, unless you have a proper record deal here in the States, we can't take you.
Really?
And,
wow.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I could technically go and try myself. I would go, and I've done this a few times. You put it out there to get a U.S. tour agency or Canadian tour agency to pitch a tour. Well, what do you think we're going to be playing? Since we don't have a track record there, it's not like some fans would think we're going to walk into these 2,000 seaters and sell out and everybody's going to know us. You have to be promoted for that to happen. And in order to, so nobody's going to gamble on a band coming back first time in 30 years, or 20, whatever it would be. And you'll be playing the smaller clubs, which there's nothing wrong with. And we do that sometimes in Europe. Sometimes we do it for a free fan show, or there's a couple of countries where we literally play to 400 people, which I know it sounds like a good thing to some people, but we're actually used to playing to a lot of people overseas. So I'd get down and just do this in the States and Canada just to do it. But you got a problem there because you got to pay everybody. I hire my musicians. They're not band members. They're hired. And you got to pay for crew. You got to pay for that. And then some would argue, well, then who cares? Pay some money and make your fans happy. Well, you got no promotion. You're barely going to get a shower. You're going to have, it's a big fucking pain in the ass for something that nobody wants except the hardcore fans.
Right.
Yeah, and you're just driving around in a van, sleeping in each other's underwear.
Yep.
And losing money.
Yeah, and you know what? If I tell you, there's part of me that goes, hey, stop being a friggin' diva and just put the money in and do it. But I just don't feel that. I just don't feel morally that I should have to plop in $50,000 to $75,000 to either rent two vans or get a cheap tour bus to go down there to play for promoters that are clearly going to rip us off and not promote and not pay.
Right.
Well, what the hell's the point? Like, you know what I mean, right? So, but yeah, it's a different thing in the other side. From my side, if you see it, actually, I made an incorrect comment. 3 of the big 4 have offered over the last 15 years to bring us down there, and they thought that would help me out, and I totally appreciate it. And I was jumping to talk to every single label down there, and I did, and that was it. They just wouldn't sign it, so I gave up a second time.
Wow, that sucks.
So I'm going to change topics here. So you were talking earlier, you were using your own recording studio. Now, when you started it up, were you working on tape, or were you working on like early computers? Like, how did that start for you?
Yeah, the first Annihilator demos. Okay, that's the only way I can associate tape with me is back in the demo days, which was late '84 with Annihilator when we started. I think December '84. The demos I did were on this thing, a company called Fostex made, and Tascam too, but Fostex made this cassette 4-track machines. And it was basically just put a cassette in. Yeah, 4 tracks. And that was amazing because I was kind of by myself writing music and playing all the instruments and doing this stuff. I'd take a crappy microphone and sing on it and all that. And that little 4-track was the basis for me being interested in studio work and equipment and geeking out on that stuff and how things are recorded and albums are recorded and made. So that was a career I could have diverted over to being, I think, an engineer, and then eventually I think a mix engineer would have been my strong point. But it didn't pull me that far. I thought, why can't I do all of this? And that's kind of how I ended up doing this band, which was, let me do everything I can do, including booking the band at summer festivals, managing, looking after the money side, writing almost everything there is to write, producing it all, playing the bass on every single Annihilator song, on every album except 3 songs I was reminded of by Russ Berquist, by the way.
Russ will remind you of that.
Yeah, no, he did. He was right. I'm glad he corrected me because I've been going around for years. I played all the bass and all the Annihilator records, and he goes, actually, I played a song on the Waking the Fury album, Jeff. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Shit, sorry about that.
You said it. You actually just said it the exact way he talks. That's awesome.
Yeah, Canadian, eh?
He can talk.
Oh, it's awesome, isn't it?
Wow, we didn't even talk about the record once.
No, I brought it up, and he just was like, fuck this, I don't want to talk about it.
Wow, what a nice guy.
Oh, yeah, such a nice guy. Like, what an open book. Like, yeah, he told me, fuck off, I'm never getting a record deal again. And then I made so much fucking money, I bought a house, 2 cars, a fucking recording studio, going on vacation. Fuck that guy.
That was great.
Yeah. And just so you know, if you buy a house where he bought a house in White Rock, like if he bought that in the 90s, he probably bought it for like $300,000, $200,000. It's probably now worth like $5 million.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
whether he sold it or not, I don't know. But
Yeah, that was definitely one of the better interviews. That was great.
yeah, yeah.
I couldn't even get a word in. You got some things in, and then he would just go.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, I super appreciate that because we've had the conversations where you get the one-word answers or the dude stoned and can't speak or whatever. So that is beautiful.
Who was that? Like that one guy we had?
I didn't know what to say.
How do you guys stay a band? I don't know. Like, how do you work across the internet? Email.
Yeah. So that was great.
All right, what is up? It is Pathos back again with his pick of the day right here on the Brutally Delicious podcast. When you get to examine the growth of an artist over a couple of decades from an influential second wave black metal band to what you have here now with Ihssahn's latest EP, Telemark, out on Nuclear Blast this past February 14th. It's so interesting and really satisfying to see the growth of an artist. Ihsahn has really done that over the years. To go from being known as the frontman of a black metal band to a Norwegian composer is something not many people have been able to accomplish, but we really see the kind of artistic genius that he exhibits through these songs. The song you hear underneath me now is titled Telemark. A couple things I noticed right off the bat. There's a lot of dynamics in the song. It's not just straight to the top, hit you in the face for 4 or 5 minutes. It takes you on a journey. It tells you a story. There's progressive and folk elements and almost this classic rock sensibility to it. But trust me, it doesn't stay right there. The black metal vocals come in and it truly does become a heavy experience. One thing I like about the overall mix of this song, there is a lot of room to breathe. You can hear all the individual elements going on, and there is a lot going on in this track. This is definitely an EP that I would highly suggest you head over to Nuclear Blast website, pick up the digipack or the vinyl for the ultimate listening experience. So be sure to head on over there and pick up some awesome merchandise and support the artist. And until next time, with his pick of the day, this is Pathos on the Brutally Delicious podcast.
Hello out there. Yes, hello out there, everyone. I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. Together we host None But the Brave, a podcast dedicated to the music and career of Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce and E Street Band are on tour right now for the first time in 6 years, and we're taking a detailed look at what's happening on stage in our bi-weekly episodes.
We've also been recently joined by some very exciting guests, including rock journalist Warren Zanes and Stephen Hayden, Backstreet's Magazine founder Charles Cross, and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
If you're a diehard Springsteen fan, this is the show for you.
So please subscribe to None But the Brave on your favorite podcasting platform, and we hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you.